Hi, everybody. It's Mark Rushton of MarkRushton.com. It is Sunday, April 11th, 2021, and we're going to talk about an article that I read, and there's some really good points to it. I want to be very constructive with going through this article, but then I also want to point out all the things that are wrong, all the glaring things that are. Who am I? Who am I? I'm a recording artist. I've been a member of ASCAP since 2002. I've always released music independently. I've been using electronic distributors since 2004. I've been a podcaster since late 2004. And I use five different distributors to distribute my music and sounds worldwide. I publish under not just my name, but a whole bunch of pseudonyms and a variety of different types of music and field recordings and things like that. So I know a little bit about the streaming era, digital distribution, and all that sort of stuff. I would not consider myself an expert, but it's a very difficult industry to know everything about it. But that being said, there is an ongoing campaign by the media, certain sectors of music journalism. They hate streaming. They've always hated streaming. They despise it for a number of different reasons. And they are waging essentially just an ongoing disinformation campaign. And some parts of it I believe have merit and value, and we should be discussing that sort of thing. And then other parts of it are pure propaganda or outright lies. And it's sad to see this sort of stuff going on. And so, listen, if we're going to have a debate here in the media, let's also include. I'm going to kind of dip my toe in here, and I'm going to try to be very constructive about this because it's whatever. But if the media ever called me, absolutely never ever talk to the media. Never talk to them. They are not, because they will. Even if they quote you directly, you gotta record it, and it's just so it's this one here. Of course, it's The Guardian, and it's the music streaming debate. What artists, songwriters, and industry insiders say, and it's by this guy here. It doesn't matter; it could be by any one of the Guardian writers in the music industry, because they all hate streaming. And of course, it's streaming is the problem. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be more fair. Of course, that's not the problem. That's what's really going on here. And you'll see here, I do agree with Billy Bragg completely. I do agree with Ed O'Brien of Radiohead. I agree with Steve Mason, who used to be in the Beta Band. And I agree with Merck. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that here in a little bit. We'll go through the article and talk about each one of the artists. Not all of them, but most of them, actually, because there's a lot of stuff that's not mentioned here that does kind of need to be mentioned. That if you were actually, you should be doing a little bit of deep digging on all of the people here. And let me just say right up front here first, of all the different 25 figures in the music world, absolutely no rappers or hip hop people here, right? And so it's like, why you don't have any rappers or hip hop? Why is that, right? Because they have learned over the years. They have learned everything about sampling and fair use and rights management and not signing contracts. They have learned, and so it's rare, and they diversify what they're into, whether it's fashion or liquor or whatever. They that's why nobody's jumping in here, right? So let's get started. Right off the bat in the first paragraph there's that straw man, which is complaining that some artists are struggling to make minimum wage. That's the usual straw man, because artists typically do not, when we release music, when we get music out there for consumption onto the digital music services. The minimum wage, what is that? That has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Again, the main problem here is contracts, and then I think to a lesser extent, particularly for independent musicians, I've been saying this for a long time. You need to know how to look at your royalty statement. You need to know how to use Excel. You need to know how to filter data in Excel. It's not that hard, right? You need to know how to load up a CSV or import a TSV or import a text file that has your data in there. Every service does things differently, right? You can't just rely on, your record company or your manager. You got to know how to. It's not that hard. I do it every month. I go through my stuff. I don't do it with a big fine tooth comb or anything like that. And yeah, in my day job, I do tech stuff. I do stuff with Excel and everything like that. But as far as like the basics of just loading up a file and looking at it and filtering it, it's not that hard. You can sit down with somebody who knows that for, maybe an hour or so, and then you're off to the races. So there's that. Kind of want to go through that there. So we get down here and everybody complains about the per stream, and nobody seems to understand how that is factored, even though Spotify has a web page out there on how it is factored, and nobody can seem to find that. It's been out there for years. And that's old ground. I'm not going to go over that. And then it's like, many have been asking whether it is right that the split in streaming revenues means 50% goes to the labels, 30% to the streamers, and the rest divided among all the interested parties. That's if you have a contract. Like I don't have a contract with a major or a minor label, so I don't have to worry about that. I get, the streamers take 30% or whatever. You don't even see that 30%. And then whatever distribution deal I have, whether they take 9% or 15%, or I pay a yearly fee, that's how that works. And then, of course, with regard to the mechanical royalties and the publishing royalties, I use Songtrust. They take 15% to manage that worldwide, and they earn every penny. They earn that buck. And it also says in here, the labels say that they're investors in talent. That's true. That's true. Everybody wants to sign those contracts so that they can become Britney Spears or Demi Lovato or DMX, because they all have good lives, right? Oh, wait. Like all the people who are like superstars and they get featured all the time, and they all have these just terrible stories of drug addiction and mental illness and alcohol addiction and troubles with the law. Like, do you not see that pattern there? Like, maybe you don't need to be a big superstar, right? Maybe you don't need to sign that contract. Maybe you don't need to be a teen pop star with 15 people writing your song. Where's the money? Where's all the money now? I don't understand. I have this $8 million mansion. I have several of them. Why don't I own the rights? Why don't I own the masters? Oh my gosh. You see these stories all the time. Like, really? It's never enough, right? So anyway, there's some sort of committee out there and they have recommendations and whatever. They're just going to kick that can down the road because listen, the music industry, Apple, through iTunes, Spotify, and all these other streaming companies, they saved the music industry from itself. They did. You have all these artists and songwriters complaining that they can't write a song and make a living off of fluff, because back in the day, 20 years ago or so, the record company would only release the $18 CD. They would not release the single. And thus, if you wanted that music kind of pre-broadband internet, you'd have to go out and buy that $16, $18 album. And that's how those songwriters, were able to buy their mansions off B-sides and fluff that nobody cares about in the streaming era. You go back to those sorts of albums that were released back in the day, and you see that nobody cares about that sort of stuff, right? So that's what they're complaining about. Or you have these musicians out there who do not write hit music, and they want to be paid hit music wages. We'll get to that. Yeah, this is going to be kind of a long video. Nile Rodgers. He says here that the system is unfair. Artists and writers are not remunerated properly or equally. Well, can you provide some examples? Can you be constructive about this? Or are you just going to say it's just not fair? You have to be a little bit more constructive in your argument here. We don't even know what a stream is worth, and there's no way. You can. Spotify has it out on their page, based upon their revenue and all this sort of. They have a page that explains how it is, right? And Spotify is not, they're a public company, but they're not like, hold on here. They're not like Apple Music, which is, they've got, the rich uncle propping up that side of things, being able to pay artists more. We don't have YouTube Music, which is owned essentially by Google, Alphabet, whatever. And again, being able to be subsidized in that regard. So we don't know what a stream is worth. Yeah, we don't know what a stream is worth. A stream is based upon a pile of music, a pile of money that is brought in that is split amongst people who listen to that, the activity on that, the popularity of that. So we do know that it's what he wants to know how much is that worth, right? Well, it's going to be worth different on every other system, and we've known that for a long time. So I don't know why are we still talking about this? Nadine Shah. Whew. Wow. Why do we keep talking to her? Why do we keep talking? She does about 7,000 streams a day on Spotify, which is about maybe $9,000 a year if she were an independent artist, which she's not. I believe she is signed to a label. So she might make $20,000 a year off all the streaming services. And of course, that gets divided up at the record company level and everything like that. They always go to her for some reason, and it's just like, you don't write hit music. You're just a critical darling. And then the opinion that we see here, I believe streaming must be fixed. Fixed? What, does something need to be cut off? What's going on here? Right? The 3 major labels are bragging about record profits. Isn't that a good thing? No, that's not a good thing, because they have contracts. We'll get to that here with Billy Bragg. What then can fix it and make it better for artists? Maybe artists should stop signing bad contracts. Maybe. Oh, we don't want to go on that because we are a signed artist, if I'm not mistaken. Then here's the other thing that really just, she does not understand economies of scale at all. Subscription fees for the like of Spotify have stayed the same for nearly 10 years. Increasing this fee may not be so popular during a pandemic, but it does need to go up. It does? So 10 years ago, when Spotify had about 32 million paying subscribers, most of them in Sweden and Europe, now it has over 150 million, right? They have had to build additional infrastructure, but everything is scaled up rather beautifully, right? To the point where they're not, if I'm not mistaken, they're not losing as much money. They have money now to waste on podcasting, which as a musician, you should be a little alarmed about, because I don't see where they pay all this money for these podcasting services, and then $100 million for Joe Rogan or whatever. Like maybe there's some money to be generated out of that, but podcasting, our artists are artists and the record labels subsidizing podcasting when it comes to something like Spotify. I don't know. I don't know the economies of that. But her argument here, Spotify has increased at least 120 million paying subscribers in the last 10 years. As Merck will say, it has become a utility. And so there are other problems with raising the price of this at this point in time, which is that Apple Music, YouTube Music, Deezer, Tidal, Amazon Music Unlimited, they all kind of they all are around that sweet spot of $10 a month. So if somebody raises their price and somebody else doesn't raise their price, everybody's got that circular firing squad, right? And then if everybody raises their prices at the same time, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, some people may quit, but probably not. What's going to happen is all governments around the world are going to get involved. They're going to say, "Oh, the people cannot afford $12.95 a month." Here, right? That's exactly what's going to happen. What's the word? Windfall profits. People are struggling. How can they afford $3 a month increase? They're just going to go back to stealing. Oh, God. So that's nice, but that's never going to happen in the way that you think it's going to work, Nadine. It's just not. We need a fair system in place. What do you mean? What are you talking? We need more transparency. Maybe you need more transparency with your label, right? I don't know. What do you mean? We need more transparency. I get my royalty reports every month. I don't. What more transparency? What more do you need? What more do you want? I mean, I have to have faith that companies like Spotify are sending out correct data, and that everything is above board, and that the numbers are legit. I don't know. What do you want an audit? Do you want to do it occasionally? You can do an audit. There are ways to do audits of streaming services without involving the government or anything like that. You could release music under a secondary name or something like that nobody's ever heard of, and maybe do a little streaming of your own music, and then just see what happens. See whether or not it's actually the numbers are legit, and then compare that to you as an artist. There are ways to do that. There's ways to set that up. And trust me, if there was any funny business going on, you would think somebody by now would have attempted that and exposed the industry. When you think about decades ago, the way that the record industry behaved, it was there was a lot of mob involvement, and then there was a lot of stuff going on, with like the Columbia House Record Club and just the way the accounting was done and everything, and all that stuff got kind of payola. Listen, if this was going on, I think we would know about it. And if it was going on, yeah, that these companies should be. If that sort of stuff is going on, it should be squashed. But anyway, Nadine, why do they go to her? Why do they go to Kate Nash? Kate Nash, who had she actually does pretty good on the streaming services. And I think she's only released a new album here in the last several years. Most of her hits, I believe, were 10 or 15 years ago. But I looked it up. I mean, she's probably doing, maybe $120,000 to $150,000 a year on Spotify. So she's probably earning, before contracts and before all that sort of stuff, she's probably earning $250,000, $300,000. And that's pretty good for not being able to tour, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what your lifestyle's like, but yeah, I think what was she doing? About 100, netting 120,000 a year. I can't remember the exact numbers on her stream. I think you're streaming about 100,000 streams a day, that's good. That's a good life. Most musicians would love to have that. And again, I've had enough success in my career to have a voice, to get a foot in the door, pay my bills, invest in my art. But what if a musician doesn't want to tour? What if they just want to buy a house one day and have kids or not pay rent? Not being paid fairly for our recorded work means our industry is not inclusive and makes music a club for the privileged. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Everything she said up until the end there, I largely agree with, but I don't know. This guy here, Field Music, he regularly releases new material. It's not particularly popular. Most of his albums, barely scratch the UK 75. And of course, the opening statement's perfect. I don't feel we have any divine right to make a reasonable living from our music. That's true. I'm lucky to be paid anything. Yeah, a casual music consumer 10 years ago might have spent £40 buying 5 CDs a year. 10 years ago, yeah, people were probably still stealing or buying used CDs, which, there's no money from that. So this sort of kicks it down again. And Imogen Heap. Why are we talking to Imogen Heap? She's released nothing since 2014. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. You've released nothing in 7 years. Who cares what you have to say? Tim Burgess. This guy, you should see some of his other haircuts. Well, I remember when he was in the Charlatans UK, right? Now they're just the Charlatans. And yeah, they had one hit. The only one I know was the only one I know. And he just rambles, and why he's worried about the valuation of Spotify, right? This guy is not serious. This guy, stop interviewing him. God. Ayanna Witter Johnson. She's a cellist and composer. And I looked her up, and she does 1,000 streams a day. About on average. There's a couple little spikies in there, which is like what? It's $1,200 a year. And she's worried about my streaming income has become more important to me. Yeah, you make like $100 a month. And she's independent. And what does it say here? And then she does the old, I would need millions of streams to earn at least the minimum wage. Straw man. Unfortunately, the majority of income from streaming doesn't trickle down to independent artists. What? What are you talking about? Trickle down? If you're an independent artist and you have a hit, and the money goes to you. I don't know what else to say. I don't think you understand the industry. The lion's share, and then this one. The lion's share goes to streaming platforms instead of going to the creators. What? The lion's share goes to streaming platforms instead of going to the creators. That is absolutely not true. That's not true. You show me any documentation or audit that proves that. That's a completely false statement. Next. Here's a big liar. Ian Baker of Jesus Jones. This guy, it's amazing. When was your last hit? Like 30 years ago? You should just be happy you have that, right? And it says here, and initially he's right about something here. He's just like Spotify pays about 65% of its revenue. That's quite a lot for a business. But then he says this absolutely stupid thing, which is completely incorrect. Instead of the artist getting 30 quid for 1 million streams or whatever, they'd only end up getting 45 if they paid out 99% of their revenue. Nobody gets 30 quid for 1 million streams. Ian Baker. You get about, on Spotify, you get about $3,500 for 1,000,000 streams. And that's for the rights holder. For mechanical and publishing, it's typically about an additional 20%. So you get about $4,250 for 1,000,000 streams. If you own the rights and you're the songwriter and publisher. So why are you saying 30 quid for 1,000,000 streams? Yeah, I know Gary Newman said something a while back. He printed it out. Just kept printing and printing. What are you talking about? 30 quid for 1,000,000? Where is that? Where is that? I would love to see that. I have a track that's got over 1,000,000 streams. Let me tell you, I've earned more than 30 quid for it. You don't know what you're talking about. Why is this printed in here? Right? Next. Tom Gray from Gomez. Again, he talks about songwriters and composers need the market domination of major music groups to be directly addressed. Yes, Merck talks about this later on in a much better way. The value of the song is suppressed. He's absolutely right. Music is a loss leader for tech companies like Apple and Amazon. Yes. And then there's also this. Lastly, we need a limit of 25 years on recording contracts. I think it should be much less. Like if you sign a recording contract, I think you should. It should be like Major League Baseball, right? Or professional sports. You get like 7 years, and then you should be able to be a free agent, right? 7 years, and that you should be able to petition to get your rights back after a certain period of time. I'd be in favor. 25 years on recording contracts. Does it have to be so long? Do we even need recording contracts anymore? I don't know. On to Billy Bragg, who I pretty much agree with everything he says here. He nails it. And I'm just going to highlight the whole thing here. Part of the problem with low royalty rates on the streaming model is down to the fact that many artists have recording contracts that reflect physical rather than digital distribution. Before the internet came along, artists were willing to give record labels the lion's share of royalties because they did all the heavy lifting, pressing the records, distributing shop, collecting royalties, distributing the drugs. Oh, wait, you didn't say that there. Standard contracts divided profits 85% to 15% in favor of the labels. Yes. Streaming services don't pay directly to the artist. Yes. They pay the rights holders. Yes. Usually the record company, who then pay the artist according to the contract they have with them. Yes. Billy Bragg knows what's up. Given the amount of legacy material in streaming services, those payments will likely reflect the physical distribution model, despite the fact that most releases are made available by the click of a mouse. He's right. And this is part of the problem. Merck kind of covers the other half of it right there. So, yeah, I agree with Billy Bragg. Then I had to look up who Blood Red Shoes was. Another indie act that I'm unaware of. And again, it's the same old thing. As a musician, you go into the business, you don't understand how everything works. I know there's a book out there you could read by Don Passman. It's been out for a long time. No one tells you, especially with streaming, there's absolutely zero transparency. What? What do you mean by that? No transparency. Have you never looked at an Excel file before? Streaming just needs to be more transparent. No. Your record contract needs to be a little more understandable. I don't think you understand what you signed back in the day. And you want to blame the streaming service rather than your lawyer or whatever. I'm getting signed. Yay, I'm getting signed. I'm going to be like Britney Spears or Demi Lovato. Yay, I've won. when you ask a label or anyone in the industry to get a breakdown of financial stuff, it's like pulling teeth. Well, you signed a contract. You have management, you have lawyers, if you're independent, you have to know what this stuff is, or it's a good idea, right? There's not much protection for artists. There's not much protection for artists who sign bad contracts, except lawyer up. I mean, look what Bowie did in the 90s. Bowie, did the Bowie bonds thing, and just, everyone was just like, oh, he's greedy. He just wants a lot of money or something like that. But no, it was so he could go buy his old masters back. So he could dig out of that ditch from, what was it? DeFreeze? That's what he used the money for. He bought back his artistic past. Brilliant move. Oh, but later on the bonds were junk whatever. He got what he wanted. He got what he needed out of it. Good for him. So you're used to getting crumbs in this business as an artist. Yeah, because you signed a contract. You signed a lousy contract. What was your feeling when you signed with the label? You're probably like, yay. And now it's just like, oh, it's somebody else's fault. It's Spotify. I'm not earning enough. The fans suck. All right. So what else do we have here? Imogene Williams, songwriter. Again, lack of transparency. Blah, blah, blah. Crispin Hunt, the Long Pigs, and director of the Ivor Novello Awards. He talks about there will be no radio in 10 years' time. That income will disappear. Of course, in England, I believe in America, only songwriters get paid royalties on radio plays. You don't, the rights holders don't get any royalties. It's different in England. If you have a song out there that's a hit on the radio and you didn't write it, you will get some royalties from that. So that's just something to point out there. But then he goes on this here. The government needs to regulate the data. I think maybe when I first read this, I took this out of face because mainly he talks about, they need to make sure that you can't put anything up on a streaming platform without knowing who to pay for it. And what this is, and I saw this on other people too as well. It looks like record labels are able to, and I don't know whether this is true or not. Somebody needs to look into it. Can a record label release a track to a streaming service, through whatever digital distribution service? Can they actually release that without putting songwriter information in there? Because the ones that I use, the independent digital distributors, require me to put in the composer name, the writer, and then put in, is it managed by, is it self-managed? Is it what are the rights on that? Yeah, is it public domain? Is it managed by a publishing company? I put my Mark Rushton Music, put my publishing company in there. I have to do that as an independent musician every single time. So when I read this sort of stuff, I just wonder, do labels not have to put that in there? Because I have to. I've been doing that for quite some time. And of course, this is a big problem with things like in the United States, the MLC, because they're getting all of this mechanical and songwriter information from the streaming services, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube Music. And then they're trying to match up everything with the songwriters, the publishing companies, and all this sort of stuff. And they usually do it through, I guess they do it through ISRCs. and probably also titles and things like that. So there's a lot of data crunch. I could just imagine how awful it of a problem this is. But again, I have to enter everything in when I am releasing the track, and then also when I use Song Trust, they pull that data in there too. So I think the way that I do it, because I have a process through the distributor, and then also through my the company that manages Song Trust manages my mechanical royalties and publishing stuff. I think I'm pretty good there, unless I do a typo or something like that. But uh, so his point there, yeah, I saw this wasn't the only place I saw it. So, and then there's Bonnie Prince Billy, who doesn't use streaming services. Why even bother talking to him? You might as well just be talking to Ted Kaczynski with his manual typewriter. Steve Mason from the Beta Band, essentially kind of saying the same thing that Billy Bragg said. Love the Beta Band. Wish they'd get back together, but I get it. His solo stuff's really good. Orphy Robinson. This is a guy that gets about 10 streams a day on Spotify. And so I got to listen to him mainly because I loved what he said here. Streaming is having a very real effect on the music I love, jazz. People are saying that because of the nature of what we do and the art that we create, that we're going to have to change it to fit into Spotify playlists, which value songs that are shorter and don't have long intros. Some jazz musicians I know are saying, should we make something that's 2.5 minutes long? It could trigger a huge change in how some music sounds. That's true. And what's wrong with having a shorter track, right? You look at some of the more jazz tracks that have been hits, actual pop hits way back in the day. They were shorter or they were edits, right? So kind of interesting. It's like, that's the thing about some jazz musicians. You go on and you get 7 minutes, and 12 minutes, and 18 minutes, and that's fine. But then there's also something of trying to fit it into that pop song format. And then maybe also, I don't know, maybe Spotify needs to create, and I haven't not looked into this, but maybe Spotify needs to have curated playlists with longer tracks for certain jazz musicians. I mean, that's what I build. I build a variety of different public playlists. I curate a whole bunch of public playlists, and some of them are specifically for longer tracks, long ambient, long field recordings, long whatever, longer tracks. Some people are into that. They like that longer experience, the deep listening, the repetition, whatever it is. Ed O'Brien of Radiohead, pretty much agree with him here too, as well. And he talks in here about transparency, but he talks about the older system, and that is the record labels. They were not about transparency in the old days. And again, I don't know what it's like to be signed to a label and have to deal with getting proper accounting. I know I've heard many stories. I've read many biographies where they can't get a proper accounting because they're it just it's just theft. And unfortunately, that still an issue today? It should not be an issue today, right? Again, why didn't this article have any rappers or hip hop artists in it, right? Because they're all about getting paid, and they're all about show me the money, right? What else he talk about here? Upcoming musicians. Yeah, the major labels are trying to maximize their revenues, which I totally understand, but it's unsustainable. He's right. When you think a little bit more deeply into this, he's right about that, because what happens is, you would say like the executives of the suits or the MBAs or whatever like that, they're always looking to get a little bit more, and they can't stop, and it becomes they cannibalize themselves, or they ruin things. They ruin the label. They can't control themselves, or they're not music people. They come from another industry, and so they try to apply those financial practices to the music industry, which can lead to problems. Love this part here that he talks about, Ed O'Brien here. He talks about, and I guess there have been like inquiries and debates with the government talking about this sort of stuff. During the inquiry, this has come out, and one of the standout moments for me was during the first panel when MPs, which are politicians, simply try to get their heads around traditional recording contracts and the biases that are built into them. Now, again, most of those politicians are lawyers, but they don't work in the area of the music industry, or even contracts or recording contracts or anything like that. Maybe they know a little bit. Maybe before they were politicians, they had a little bit of experience in this. But I don't know, the kind of people that go into politics, they just want the free meal and give me your money, right? And and of course, the industry has, they got a lot of money, and they can lobby people. And it's like, yeah, we don't want that. We don't want that change. That's going to hurt our industry, and that'll hurt your reelection campaign. That's reality, man. What do you do about that? I don't know. And then he talks about, I don't think you've got some kind of, I don't think until you've got some kind of benevolent owner who buys a major record company, that's never going to happen. It'll have to be built from the ground up. You know what? I'm going to stop these copyrights for life, and I'm going to give something back to the artist. That could happen. That very well could happen. And the industry would need to change in a particular way, where you would not have to be so reliant on the copyrights. It would be more of a service industry. Other people have talked about this as well, where, like the record companies are more of a marketing campaign, marketing company. And that's probably what they're going to morph into. But we'll see, right? Largely agree with what he says there. Then this next one here, when I look at the way streaming works, I feel like I've opened the bonnet of a car and there's no engine in there. Or there's a new engine in there, because if you looked at car engines, particularly on fancier cars, there's just hoses and wires and stuff going absolutely everywhere. And okay. And she makes a good point. There needs to be a minimum data requirement for submitting a song to Spotify. There is, if you go through independent distributors. I've been doing this for some time. Do record labels not have to submit data with regard to songwriters? I don't know. That this seems to be a recurring thing, right? It is what I would call an anti-pattern. In the tech industry, we would call that an anti-pattern. It's like something that's everybody's mentioning that is a problem. So why can't we circle in on that and talk about no? We're not, and we don't want to talk about recording contracts. We just want to point our finger at Spotify and say, what is the per stream? We can't figure this out. Where's our transparency? I've asked somebody and they can't get me any information. Again, transparency, fair division of income, blah, blah, blah. See a cap on the percentage. It would be great to see a cap on the percentage that these monoliths are able to retain in profit. Okay, whatever. Where's that going to go? To you? Yeah, maybe not. Giles, Peterson, DJ, label owner, BB6 music presenter. Oh yeah, they have like a sort of an alternative system for that. That's great. Wonderful. No, I don't care. Merck Mercuriadis, I believe is how his name is pronounced. This guy is brilliant. And I'm going to read most of his statement here, and I pretty much agree with it. And I understand that, as the CEO and founder of the Hypnosis Songs Fund, he's buying up, he's using investor money, and he's using that to buy songwriter catalogs in the hopes of, generating, trying to generate additional income on that for whatever reason. But he makes a really good point here, even though he has an interest in saying this. It's the right thing. He is saying the right thing here. And let me read through this here. He really does a beautiful job with this. Okay. Streaming has saved the music business by making it more convenient for people to once again consume music legally rather than through illegal file sharing. That's true. In doing this, it has taken music from being a luxury purchase and turned it into a utility. That's true. Brilliant. And that has completely changed the economies of music. Now the contractual relationships between the major record companies and the artist-songwriters needs to be reviewed. Yes. Artists and songwriters are the lifeblood of the music industry, but the revenue taken by a master is 58.5 cents out of every pound, whereas the writer-publisher gets 11.5. That's true. This guy's got his numbers, as opposed to, where is he? Ian Baker. Like getting 30 quid for a million or whatever. It's like 1%, dude. Get your numbers straight. So Merck here's got his numbers right. What are all these ads? Get out of here. Here's the great part that Merck says. I like this. And nobody mentions this. Billy Bragg didn't mention this, although he was getting there. And maybe his part was edited out so that Merck could shine here. I don't know. But I like this. The problem is that 3 major record companies own the 3 largest publishers. And it is in the records label's interest to push for the income received on the master sales side to be greater than on the writer's publishing side, where the margins are higher at the cost of the songwriter. The major publishers are therefore being prevented from advocating for their songwriters' interests. Yes, he's right. And yes, he has a vested interest in trying to get the songwriters' interests increased, but that's a good thing. Honestly, if you just had like Billy Bragg and Ed O'Brien and Merck, you've covered about 95% of the important stuff here, and done it with facts or interesting topics rather than this sort of all this other stuff about fairness and transparency and why can't the world be perfect? And then you get into all these other sort of industry people here. And honestly, it's just, who cares what they say? It's just a bunch of, and then you get the guy from SoundCloud, which is just like, we have this new system where, okay, whatever, who cares? And then all these other people and Horatio Gutierrez, he cranks out the numbers here, and he's in a tough position because you've got so many people up there that, they're pointing their finger at you, and you're not the problem. You're not the problem. You have to pay the record labels, and the record labels have contracts with the artists. And why don't the artists understand this? They don't want to talk about it. It's the third rail. All right. I've rambled long enough here, but it's good. It's good to have this sort of debate. It's good to talk about this sort of stuff. But unfortunately, the media cannot edit itself. It has an agenda. The agenda is to hate on Spotify. The agenda is to bring this sort of stuff up constantly, and just sort of, it's just it's almost kind of in a clickbaity clickbaity sort of fashion that we see these sorts of, and the same people talking, saying the same thing. When, why can't we dig into this a little bit better with what Billy Bragg said, with what Ed O'Brien said, which with, I'm getting mealy mouthed here. I need to go get some lunch. With what Merck said, why can't we start with that and have a little bit better discussion instead of going off on all these people who just, clearly don't even know how to open an Excel file, right? They don't look at their statements. They rely on their record company for everything. Why are we, or they've signed a contract and now they're not really in the position to be critical of their record company, or they don't want to admit that they made a mistake. That they look at, again, the rappers and the hip hop artists who release stuff independently, or they got their own systems in place and they're not working through the majors, and they're able to keep most of their money, right? Don't you think those artists who've signed the 80, giving away 85% after advancement, after recoup, don't you think they have a little bit of regret? But they're so invested in it. They're so invested in being that, pardon me, being invested in that part of the industry, they can't be critical of it, right? They can't bite the hand that still sort of feeds them. So we're gonna point at Spotify. Spotify's a big bad evil company that's worth too much money. I'm losing my voice. Anyway, I had to talk about this. I tried to be constructive here, best I could. Why do you have to publish the lies? Why do you have to publish the lies? There's no, you are not being constructive when you're publishing stuff that's just can be demonstrated by either, by other artists, right? Do you not, and this is what I say all the time, particularly people in the, do you not know anybody? Do you not know any independent artists who get paid royalties? Right? There's more to the industry than just live music. There's a lot of us out there, in our bedrooms or in our houses or in our sheds, making and releasing stuff under the radar of the industry, of the media, of critics. I don't care about critics. I do not care about critics at all. I could care less. I don't want to do any interviews with media. I have no interest ever doing that. I just want to make my art, get it out there, get in the systems, learn those systems, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, take advantage of the systems that, things like Spotify for artists, Apple Music for artists, Pandora Amp, things like that. That's what's important and dear to me. I've learned these systems, learning about things like song trust and how much time that saves. It's very, very important. But the media doesn't want to promote that sort of stuff. They're always looking for anger and division and half truths and straw man and lies, and it's sad. This is why I really don't pay too much attention to the media anymore. But occasionally things like this slip through, and it's just like, what? No wonder the public is so misled when you see things like this. Some musicians struggle to make minimum wage. That's in the first paragraph. That's not. What are you talking about? Total straw man. So I don't think media is ever going to up their game. They're so invested in clickbait. They're so invested in division, dividing people, and I don't know. It just needs to crash and burn. But the industry can be fixed. Like what Billy Bragg said. We have to revise. We're going to have to revise. How do you revise contracts? right? Does the government come in and say, you know what? Lifetime contract? No. Some company owning somebody else's copyright for a lifetime or 25 years? No. Maybe that needs to come in. But how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that with you when you get the big record companies out there with all that money to throw at politicians, right? Politicians who can't even read an artist's contract and understand it, right? You went to law school, you passed the bar, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot to talk about there. But, pointing a finger at Spotify, what have they done that's so terrible? Other than, and I would say this about Spotify, they're throwing a lot of money at podcasting. Maybe they have some sort of reasoning for that, but I tend to think that I don't really know if the investment is there. I know they want to keep everybody within their ecosphere, and they want to keep people listening to their platform and all that sort of stuff. But maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. But I also tend to think that, God, you're spending a lot of money on this stuff. That does it really generate that much money for you? Maybe it does. I don't know. I don't see where I kind of see, I don't know. I kind of see like artists and musicians sort of, the podcasters are the parasites to the artists. Yet another thing that's parasitic to artists and musicians. That's a concern of mine. It may not be true. I may be wrong. But then again, it may be somebody with, an MBA that's going to tell, oh, no. Riches are right around the corner. Really? Can I see an accounting of that? That'd be great. Don't worry. Oh no, send me an Excel file. I can go through it. I can figure it out. I've done a little auditing in my life. All right, big long ramble for today. Nobody's going to watch this anyway, or nobody's going to make it all the way to the end here. But I've tried to be constructive. It's good to have these sort of debates. Not debates, discussions. But yeah, all right, that's it for today. Talk to you later.